Hey everyone, Stu here, back again finally. Sorry it's been so long between videos again, but I've been hard at work on a new video, and here it is, finally. I thought I'd do something a little bit different this time. Instead of doing a playing video, I thought today I'd try doing a review video. A lot of my favorite content on YouTube is actually game reviews and movie reviews, and I just enjoy that kind of content. I thought maybe I'd try my hand at it and review a guitar, because guitar is what I know and what I'm good at. So yeah, so today I'm going to be reviewing the Ibanez RG 350DX, my very first guitar. First one that I bought with my own money. I started out on my mom's Mexican Strat, but quickly moved to this one once I was saved up over a summer job. And it was an awesome guitar. For many years it was the only guitar I had, and I probably learned the majority of how to be a musician on this guitar. So it seemed like an appropriate place to start for a first review, because I'd like to do more of this. It was fun to make a review. It was a lot of work, but I totally have infinite respect for game reviewers and movie reviewers now that I know what they have to go through, and mine is probably not even nearly as good as theirs. But yeah, it seemed like the Ibanez was a good place to start, because it was my first guitar, and as much as I learned playing guitar on it, I learned a lot about making review videos, making the review for this. So it just seemed appropriate. So here we go. Here's my first review on a new show I'm calling Loose Frets. This is the Ibanez RG 350DX. Let's go do it.
The Ibanez RG 350DX is a mid-level instrument suitable for beginners and comfortable for advanced players alike. It is commonly classified as a Strat clone, or Super Strat. The technical term for this body type is actually a Californian. This is due to the simple fact that the first of its kind, the Fender Stratocaster, was invented in California. The Stratocaster exploded like an atom bomb when it first arrived on the music scene. All of the coolest and best players suddenly had a Fender in their hands. The body is just so classic and elegant, it harkens back to a bit of a bygone era, but it is also timeless and transcends all genres of music. Its story is pretty well documented, but it's one that I do have an interest in telling. I love my Strats so much, but I only recently came to appreciate them, and indeed only this past Christmas became a proud member of the Fender Owners Club. I decided it would be best to start with a review of my first guitar, the one that I began my musical journey on. I feel the best way to tell its story is also to tell a little bit of my own. I did actually spend the first few months learning on my mom's Mexican Strat, but I became absorbed in music so fast that I quickly decided that I needed my own guitar. I was falling in love with rock, and especially harder, heavier stuff. At first it was a lot of Led Zeppelin, of course, and then Black Sabbath and Ozzy, then later things like Van Halen, Black Label Society, and Rush. I always loved Pink Floyd too, of course, but I never felt like I could play like that until later. I didn't think I had the technique or patience to learn to play like David Gilmour. Not at the tender age of 15, anyway. No, these were the days of learning bits and pieces of songs, playing parts I could, trying to play the parts I couldn't, and coming back to them later as I progressed. But heavy riffs and tunes were what I found to be the most fun, so I needed to get a heavy guitar. There was a Long McQuaid nearby, and some friends and I who had begun talking about starting up a band went in and started looking at some gear. I was drawn to Ibanez guitars right away, because I really liked the Californian body shape, especially with the sharper contours on the cutaways that are featured on most Ibanez guitars. The neck felt very comfortable, and they sounded mean and sharp, like a knife, not tonally sharp. I tried a couple out, and this one caught my eye because of the perloid pickguard and the high contrast finish, the pure white and the black hardware. I decided it was the one then and there. The only problem was that it was $789 at the time. The current models go for about $399 or so, and they have more features, like adjustable spring tension via thumb adjuster on the back plate. Gear sure can be depressing sometimes. So, I got a summer job, and started saving up for it. And that was one of the most rewarding working experiences of my life. It was before I had to pay for rent, bills, food, you know, the necessary but boring stuff. So I was able to just save up for it all summer long. Although, I did go on a bit of a CD and video game buying spree as well, just to tide me over while I waited. When I finally did have enough to buy it, I actually had to order in another one because it had sold and there wasn't another one in stock right away. But Long McQuaid was able to get one in within about a week. The folks at Long McQuaid always have your back. Hashtag not sponsored. When I brought it home, that was one of the most exciting days of my life. My very own guitar that I had shot for, worked for, and saved for. What I found when I did get it home was that it was a lot of guitar for a beginner like me. If I could go back in time and give myself advice back then, it probably would have been to get an Ibanez with a hardtail or Strat trem style bridge. As awesome and fun as Floyd Rose bridges are, they are a lot of maintenance for a beginner. Funny thing is, some people actually did offer me that very advice, but I wanted to play like Eddie Van Halen or Randy Rhoads doing all the whammy stunts and impressive tricks. I used to kind of think of guitarists like magicians who were performing tricks as much as they are playing music. As a more experienced musician, this makes me laugh. I know now that it isn't magic. It's blood, sweat, and tears and hours of grueling practice. Though I suppose the same could be said for a magician's act. The magic in music comes from performers making it look so easy when it sounds so intensely difficult. That was what I suppose drew me like a magnet to heavier music. The heavier the music is, the more insane the playing was, or at least it seemed that way to me at the time. And so with that, I was off. I started playing and playing and playing my new RG more and more and more. The RG is a powerhouse. It's been a popular model for a long time now, and it stands apart from the Strat. It's a totally different guitar, and it's carved out its own place in musical history. Mine is a 2001 Ibanez, probably built in the Cork factory in Korea. It's right at the tail end of the first generation of 350s, produced from 1998 to 2001. Before then, they were the RG 450DX, which was basically the same guitar, except for the pickups. The 98 to 01 350s have Power Sound, PS1, PS2, and PS single pickups in an HSH or humbucker single humbucker configuration, while the 450 featured Ibanez's own Infinity pickups. They are described as high output with enhanced harmonics and high output with no muddiness for the bridge and neck pickups respectively. They're definitely a cheaper pickup and are kind of middle of the road kind of sound. Very pronounced mid-range. But a decently hot output, and they gave me the sound I was looking for back when I was an angry teenager. This one, again a 2001 model, has a basswood body. Not basswood, look it up, which is an affordable and abundant wood. Ibanez used basswood on a lot of their models, and this one in particular from 1998 all the way up to 2010. It usually is considered to be suitable for mid-level or budget guitars, but basswood provides good tone by many standards, and like many materials used in the pursuit of art, it usually comes down to how it is used. It is a soft wood, and light in weight and color too, with minimal grain. Solid basswood bodies have a fat but well-balanced tonality. The mid-range frequencies are quite well pronounced in the solid basswood body, but they're not too harsh on the ears. It can deliver soft, breathy tones as well as screaming leads. At least, that's the summary I found when I looked it up online. And for the most part, I agree. It's a nice sounding guitar. If it had some better pickups in it, it probably would sound great. I keep meaning to upgrade them, but I have other nicer guitars that I'm playing more these days, so it's kind of on the back burner. The neck is called a Wizard 2 maple neck. It was originally a one-piece neck on the 98 to 2001 and the 2003 to 2004 models, according to specs. In 2005, they switched to a three-piece neck that ran up until 2010. Now they feature the Wizard 3 neck, which is still three pieces. This is done to lower production costs. That way they can use cheaper plies of wood that normally would not be able to bear the load of strings at tension, but when the neck is split into three pieces and put together with the grains reversed from each other, it results in a neck that's just as strong as a solid one made out of better wood, but at a lower cost to Ibanez. And I haven't messed around with the new models that much, so I'm not really sure how they stack up in comparison. The fretboard itself is bound rosewood with 24 jumbo frets. The fret inlays are known as shark tooth inlays that again appeal to the rebellious teenager. It has a 16.9 or sometimes just called a 17-inch radius, which means that the neck is crazy flat. like pancake flat, not tonal flat. For a comparison, a Fender radius is usually a 9.5 inch or a Gibson at 12 to 14 inch radius. Fender is quite a bit more curved, which is why it's generally described as having a lot more feel, and being a good guitar for expressive solos like those found in many blues tunes. Basically, the higher the radius number is, very, very basic math here. I failed math all throughout high school. Please don't send hate mail. The flatter the fretboard is. And it is generally agreed between players and manufacturers that flatter equals faster for playing when it comes to fretboard construction. That doesn't mean better, it just works well for players playing fast metal type stuff because you don't have to push as hard to fret a note, which really makes a big difference when you're playing music around 175 to 200 BPM. I love my Strat, but it would just feel cumbersome or kind of off for playing lightning licks and loud metal stuff. At the same time, the Ibanez style of fretboard, and indeed the rest of the guitar, would feel out of place trying to play slower, cleaner, mellower music. That's not to say you can't use a Strat to shred and an Ibanez to write the blues with, but it would feel and sound weird. The bridge is a low TRS-2 Floyd Rose style licensed floating bridge. I say Floyd Rose style because technically a Floyd is only a Floyd when it actually says Floyd Rose on it. Kinda like how champagne is only champagne when it's made in Champagne, otherwise it's just sparkling wine. The low TRS-2 is just Ibanez's own cheaper reproduction of a Floyd Rose tremolo system. Later they switched to the Edge Pro 2 and Edge 3 bridges, which are just sleeker, more stable versions of the low TRS-2. My other Ibanez, my RGT 42DX-FM, has one of these. Obviously, since it has a floating bridge, it needs to have a locking nut, so you can have it come back in tune after you perform your whammy tricks for your audience. Tuning stability has always been somewhat of an issue for me with this guitar though, but that may be due to the fact that I was just starting out and didn't really know how to take care of this guitar properly. I ended up stripping the tension screw for the low E-string saddle from years of not wiping it down after playing. Sweat corrosion plus being too paranoid about string tension, and I was always over-tightening the screw on a regular basis when restringing. Eventually, I had to get the screw tapped out with a drill, and then I just kept using bigger and bigger screws until eventually the saddle itself just cracked in half, and I had to order a new one. Ibanez had to machine me a new part since by then they had switched to the Edge bridges, and it looked like for a while I might have to replace the entire bridge. Luckily, L&M had my back once again. They were able to get Ibanez to make a new saddle and send it over to them. Unfortunately, it took about 6 months to get the new part, so it sat in the back room. Luckily, I had other guitars to play. Overall, I love this guitar, and that could be nostalgia or me wearing rose-colored glasses for my childhood. I don't actually play it very often anymore, which makes me kinda sad now and then. It's my first guitar, and it feels like home to me, even though I play my other nicer guitars more often these days. This guitar always feels like coming home. I know exactly what this guitar can do, and thus, what I can do on it. I still think it's one of the most comfortable guitar necks I have ever played. The super flat radius and the D-neck shape, they're just a joy to play. Tone-wise, I guess it hasn't aged all that well. It was exactly the sound I wanted back in the day, and it still can get a pretty mean sound when put through the right amp or dialed up properly. But I think the pickups might be starting to go microphonic. It is pretty old now, and I played it a lot. Although it doesn't have the sheer meatiness that I get from my Les Paul or the soulfulness of my Strat, it has an intensity all its own. It's still a really fun guitar just to noodle on, and I think that's mostly because it has a great neck. It was a good choice for me as a beginner, despite some of the trouble I faced with the trem system. I do wish it could stay in tune better, doing big whammy dives and tremolo tricks. Maybe I just don't know how to set it up properly, but I find that the tuning drifts fairly frequently after a big dive or lots of whammy activity. Compared to my Les Paul Access, which is equipped with a real Floyd Rose bridge, it comes back in tune perfectly almost 100% of the time. I found playing in a band and gigging with the Ibanez, I could only rely on it for about a song or two before I needed to retune or switch guitars. That said, my blue Ibanez with the Edge bridge does retain its tuning better, which I guess figures because it's a higher end model. All in all, I'm pretty satisfied 15 years later. I did the lion's share of my musical woodshedding on that guitar, and I largely forged the guitarist I am today on these frets over all those years. For an entry to mid-level instrument that I paid less than $1,000 for, I feel I really got a lot of bang out of my buck, and definitely would encourage young musicians looking to get started on guitar playing heavier, louder stuff to check out Ibanez guitars. Maybe look at one with a standard tremolo or a hardtail. Trust me, I know whammy bars are fun, but they are a pain to deal with when you're just trying to manage learning how to play the damn thing in the first place. That said, this past Christmas marks the first time I got a guitar with a standard trem, my Strat. Even my Les Paul has a Floyd Rose on it, so, do as I say, not as I do, I guess? Anyways, always with guitars, and any instrument for that matter, it's not about how much it costs, what it's built out of, or how cool anyone thinks it is or isn't. Guitars have a personality, and each one speaks to everyone differently. This one spoke to me, and it helped me find my very early musical voice. And though I moved on to shinier, nicer instruments, they wouldn't have sounded any better in my hands if I hadn't honed that voice first. I'm proud that this is the guitar I did that on, and I will never get rid of it for that reason. No matter how far I travel, there will always be a home for me to come back to.
Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that one. It was a majorly different video for me. Way more work, but a ton of fun. I will definitely make some more review videos, but probably not right away. Probably going to make another playing video or two first, and just doing some steady content creation. This one was a lot of work, but it was fun to do, and I hope people enjoy it. So take it easy. If you enjoyed the video, maybe drop me a like, and if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the flip side.